After we announced my pregnancy at Ethan's birthday party, my sister-in-law Sierra's plan to humiliate me completely backfired. In the end, she ended up in court, was convicted, and eventually got divorced. Throughout my 7-year marriage to Adrian, life had been nearly perfect, if you ignored the chaotic presence of Sierra, who had a way of turning every moment into a source of tension. When I first met Sierra, I genuinely thought she was strong and fascinating, but the closer we got, the more I saw her dark side, controlling, manipulative, and obsessed with her brother's life. I tried my best to maintain peace for Ethan's sake, but that only seemed to make her look down on me even more. Adrian once had a short-lived relationship with Sierra's best friend back in high school, something Sierra practically forced to feel like she had control over her brother. At 23, she tried to set Ethan up with another friend of hers, and when he refused, she nearly lost it. She told their parents that Ethan was betraying the family's expectations. While Ethan's parents always supported our relationship, Sierra did not. She would constantly bring up Ethan's exes in front of me and even suggested inviting them to family dinners, claiming she ran into them by chance. It made me feel not just sad, but deeply disrespected. Ethan noticed how odd it was and told his sister to stop bringing up old flames. Instead of backing off, Sierra pivoted to attacking me, mocking me for being insecure and saying I was trying to take a place that doesn't belong to me. I tried to keep things civil, but Sierra repeatedly crossed the line. I don't want to sound paranoid, but she was clearly stalking me on social media, even though she never followed me. Anytime a man commented on one of my photos, Ethan would hear whispers from Sierra that I was fishing for attention. Ethan and I would laugh it off, but deep down I was miserable. I tried not to hate Sierra, but she gave me no choice. When we moved in together, Sierra bluntly told me I wasn't good enough for Ethan and that she'd find someone better for him. She said that right in the middle of our living room. My chest went numb. I forced a smile, but my eyes welled with tears as I turned away. After we got engaged, things got worse. Sierra stormed out during our engagement party, then called Ethan crying in the middle of the night, upset that she had to find out at the same time as strangers. A few days later, I received a lengthy message that read like a monologue, saying I should never try to change Ethan because she was the only woman who ever truly understood him. I read it and left it on scene. I knew my silence was the loudest slap she had ever received. She later sent me another long message telling me to know my place and that I'll always be the most important woman in Ethan's life. That message gave me chills. I didn't respond, but I knew she wasn't done. Still, she involved herself in every step of the wedding planning, dress fittings, the bachelorette party planning, yet never hid her disapproval. She criticized everything, from the flowers to the guest list. My fiancé called her out several times when she criticized the wedding, but her attacks became bolder, expressing open disdain for my choices. It kept getting worse. One time, while I was discussing table decorations with my mother-in-law, Sierra barged in and snapped, "It looks cheap. Can't you plan something more decent?" I had held back so many times, but that day I snapped. I shouted, "You're no longer invited to the wedding." I couldn't take her constant sarcasm and criticism anymore. The whole room fell silent. My mother-in-law, usually soft-spoken, stood by me for the first time and said, "Sierra, you've gone too far." Sierra kept causing trouble. She called Ethan, demanding he control me since I was about to be his wife. But Ethan told her point blank, "If you don't apologize, you won't be invited." Eventually, she sent a half-hearted apology text. I read it but didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her any more power over my special day. I didn't ban her from the wedding just to avoid scandal. But on the big day, surrounded by elegant pastel decor, Sierra showed up in a long black dress with a veil. It looked like she was attending a funeral. Everyone was stunned. She wandered around the venue, telling people she had lost her brother to another woman. Ethan had to pull her aside and ask her to respect the occasion, but she called me controlling and domineering, claiming she had the right to wear whatever she wanted. The chaos only ended when my in-laws asked her to leave the party. It was humiliating for me. From that day on, I completely distanced myself from Sierra. When I gave birth to our son, Noah, I banned her from coming near him. She was furious, but my in-laws fully supported me. They understood why I didn't want her anywhere near my newborn. I once believed she had changed after miscarrying her child with her ex-boyfriend, Lucas, 2 years ago. Everyone saw that as a deeply painful time. Back then, we softened our stance and allowed her to visit, to meet baby Noah. I admit, she was very gentle with my son, and I hoped for redemption. But Sierra slowly spiraled back into her old negativity. She started complaining that the whole world was against her, from former friends to her ex-boss, and even me. I realized Sierra never took responsibility for her life. She preferred playing the victim over making any real changes. She never admitted wrongdoing in arguments and always tried to sway others to her side through victimhood. This year, she got engaged. She invited everyone, except me and Ethan. Ethan was shocked. When he asked why, Sierra said, "I don't want Amira to ruin my wedding like she once humiliated me." I called her, trying to understand. She casually replied, "You wore black to my wedding. What if you do the same to mine?" I was speechless. The manipulation was obvious. Ethan then told his parents directly, "If Amira's not invited, we won't attend either, and I'm not paying a single cent toward Sierra's wedding." For the first time, I saw Ethan truly take a stand. And I knew. He finally chose the right person to protect. This made Sierra burst into tears and start blaming me for ruining everything. Her husband, Lucas, firmly replied that she had no right to blame me when she had already admitted her own faults. But Sierra kept defending herself, saying I should let go of the past since my wedding was long over. She later reached out to apologize and begged for forgiveness because Em and Fel, my in-laws, were still refusing to pay for her wedding. As much as I hate to admit it, Sierra has a frighteningly persuasive talent whenever she wants something. I, Amira, didn't want to hold on to grudges, so I agreed to let it go. Her wedding with Lucas went smoothly, and my husband and I attended to celebrate with them. But less than 6 months later, Sierra showed up at my door, bringing another storm. She complained about her short-lived marriage, said Lucas was emotionally distant, and described married life as a horrible trap. I let her stay for a few days. Ethan and I listened and sympathized, but her presence cast a heavy cloud over our home. Sierra kept venting, saying Lucas was the reason they couldn't have children. Something didn't feel right. Each morning, I usually go to the gym before heading to the office. Sometimes I bring work clothes with me so I can shower and change afterward. Sierra began scrutinizing this habit. "Why do you need to shower at the gym?" she asked. "Are you hiding something? Is that why you always bring a change of clothes?" I simply replied, "Because I don't want to walk into the office all sweaty." She nodded, her eyes fixed on me, then licked her lips in a strange, unsettling way. A chill ran down my spine. That evening, while we were all having dinner in our little suburban home outside Seattle, my mother-in-law Felicia shared a story about an old friend who had just divorced her husband after discovering he was cheating. The woman ended up receiving half his assets. As soon as Felicia finished speaking, Sierra, Ethan's sister, blurted out a question that shocked everyone. "Did you two sign a prenup?" The entire table fell silent. She asked Ethan directly, completely ignoring me as if I were invisible. Ethan set his fork down and looked straight at Sierra. "We didn't need one. We're both financially independent, and we don't live in suspicion." Sierra gave a mocking smirk. "That makes you an easy target. These days, anyone can betray anyone." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "What are you implying?" Sierra started insinuating that I was cheating, just because I always carried a change of clothes. She said as his sister, she had a duty to warn Ethan. I was speechless. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know if I was shaking from anger or humiliation. Felicia and Mason, my in-laws, immediately intervened. "Sierra, you've crossed the line," they said. But Sierra wasn't done. She glanced at little Nate and smirked. "Oh, and Nate, are we sure he's Ethan's? He doesn't look like him at all." I looked at Ethan. His face turned red with rage, his fists clenched. In my entire life, I had never seen him this furious. He stood up and stared straight into his sister's eyes. "You don't deserve to be a mother. If your child really did leave you, maybe that was the kindest thing God ever did." The room went dead silent. Sierra's mouth opened, but no words came out. G, her husband, sat beside her, silent. Everyone's eyes turned to Ethan while I just held his hand to calm him. Ethan wasn't done. "You've hated Amira simply because you're miserable. Can't you see you're destroying your own marriage? Instead of poking into ours, why don't you try saving yours?" Sierra started sobbing, then screaming like her world was collapsing. She turned to Jai for comfort, but he remained silent. Finally, Sierra ran into the bathroom. Ethan was still fuming, speechless. Felicia walked over and gently said, "Take a breath, honey. It's going to be okay." I nodded to her and looked at my husband with gratitude. He had protected me publicly, something he used to avoid. After that dinner, Ethan apologized for allowing his sister to insult both me and our son. But truthfully, I felt relieved, because he finally saw Sierra for who she really was. We decided to completely cut ties with her. No more texts, no more invitations. Mason and Felicia agreed. "This time, she really crossed the line," Felicia said, her tone serious. A year passed without any contact from Sierra. 2 months ago, I found out I was pregnant, an unexpected gift we'd stopped hoping for. Wanting to share the news during a special moment, Ethan and I decided to announce it at his birthday party. Felicia and Mason organized a backyard gathering, inviting only close family and friends. But then, Sierra showed up. We were stunned when we saw her walk in. She walked straight to Ethan, hugged him tightly, and said she missed him, that she was sorry for everything that had happened. Ethan took my hand. Softly but firmly, he said, "If you want to apologize, apologize to my wife." Sierra turned to me, her voice quiet. I've been going to therapy. I realize now that I was wrong. I'm sorry for how I treated you." I didn't know if her words were sincere, but for the sake of politeness, and because it was Ethan's birthday, I nodded and gave her a polite smile. Felicia quietly came over and whispered to me, "If you're uncomfortable, I'll ask her to leave right away." I looked at Ethan. He just shook his head. "It's fine." Strangely, throughout the party, Sierra acted cheerful, chatting with everyone as if nothing had ever happened. She talked a lot about therapy and personal growth. I stayed cautious, but didn't want to ruin the mood. Then Ethan stood up to give a toast. his voice full of emotion. I'm the luckiest man in the world, because I get one more year beside Amira. I blushed. In that moment, I forgot all the bitterness. He was still the man who made my heart flutter, just like the first day. And then, we announced the big news. We were expecting our second child. The whole party practically exploded with joy. Everyone cheered. My mother hugged me through tears. Mason gave Ethan a firm handshake. I looked around, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a real family, people who knew how to love the right way and protect one another. Only Sierra cast a shadow over the celebration. When Ethan and I shared our news, her face froze. Then she quickly turned away, expression ice cold. I didn't know if it was shock or envy, but my instincts told me to be careful. She didn't say anything, but I felt a sharp unease rising in my chest. I just hoped she wouldn't do anything to ruin the party. While I was chatting with close friends, my brother Rick and my parents insisted I sit and not worry about clearing the table with my in-laws. I smiled and stayed put, comforted by how everyone treated me like I was carrying something sacred. Then Sierra appeared, wearing a bright smile like nothing had happened. She walked over and said she wanted to serve me personally as a way to show her happiness for my pregnancy. She handed me a plate of food, saying it was her way of making up for the time she had treated me poorly in the past. I politely nodded and thanked her, still wary but not wanting to cause a scene. As I prepared to eat, I froze. On the plate was shrimp cocktail, a dish I'm severely allergic to. A chill ran down my spine. Was it an accident or intentional? I stood up, intending to get a different plate, when Jamie, Sierra's husband, walked over. He congratulated me warmly, seeming genuinely sincere. Seeing that I hadn't touched my food, I pointed to the plate and said Sierra might have made a mistake since I'm allergic to shrimp. Jamie just chuckled. Well, I love shrimp, and picked up the plate to eat it himself. I let out a small sigh of relief, though something still felt very wrong. Less than 5 minutes later, Jamie doubled over, vomiting violently into a napkin, his face pale. The entire party seemed to freeze. Jamie collapsed. Sierra screamed and rushed to his side, crying his name while staring daggers at me. I couldn't understand what was happening. Jamie pointed at the plate, then to his throat. My blood rushed to my head. Chaos broke out. An ambulance was called. Jamie was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. When the doctor informed us Jamie showed signs of poisoning, I nearly collapsed. Trembling, I told Ethan that the plate Jamie ate from was the one Sierra had handed to me. My husband turned pale. My in-laws were speechless. Throughout all this, Sierra cried hysterically, casting burning glances my way, her eyes a storm of resentment and pain. But nothing could hide the truth that was waiting to explode. Then came the confirmation. Jamie had been poisoned. I could barely breathe, knowing that plate was meant for me. In that moment, the world spun. I remembered every second of Sierra handing me the shrimp, so gently, like it meant nothing. The thought that the poison didn't just send Jamie to the ER, but could have harmed the baby growing inside me, my heart clenched. At that time, Ethan, his parents, Mason and Felicia, and my parents still didn't know what had really happened. Jamie collapsed only minutes after eating, and no one had yet identified the cause. Police were called. They quickly collected all evidence from the table, including leftover food. I sat curled up in a corner of the yard, hands trembling uncontrollably, paralyzed by fear. Jamie remained hospitalized. As I write this, Sierra is sleeping in his hospital room, as if nothing ever happened. Relatives called nonstop. Everyone asked, "How's Jamie? Who did this? Was it really poison?" Ethan and I had to answer each call, our voices choked, our minds spinning. Felicia and Mason decided to stay at our house that night. They were so shaken, they didn't dare return to the house where the once happy birthday party had taken place. No one understood how things had unraveled so quickly. I told the truth. That plate was originally for me. Sierra gave it to me. I only handed it to Jamie by accident, never imagining. Just thinking about that possibility made me shake with fear. Not just fear for my unborn child, but a deeper fear. If Sierra could do that once, could she do it again? I felt like a criminal. Even though I didn't cause any of it, I was the one who passed the plate to Jamie. I should have been more suspicious, should have refused, should have done something. I hated myself for trusting Sierra's fake smile. I never expected my story to reach so many people. Thousands of comments in just a few hours left me both grateful and overwhelmed. I still can't sleep. My body feels suffocated. What happened keeps replaying in my mind like a horror film. Ethan stays beside me, holds me close when I cry at night. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know Sierra gave me that plate. He thinks I'm just overreacting. I've read every piece of advice. Many said I need to speak up. As scared as I am, I know. Staying silent now would be a crime too. The one thing that gives me hope is the security camera system Mason installed in the backyard. If it captured the moment Sierra handed me that plate, it could be the clearest evidence. I decided I would tell everything tonight. We sat down together, just the four of us. Ethan, Mason, Felicia, and me. Dinner that night was thick with tense silence. When everyone finished eating, I put my spoon down, took a deep breath and said, "I have something important to share." I told them everything, about the shrimp plate, about the moment Sierra handed it to me, about how Jamie collapsed just minutes later. Felicia clutched her chest, eyes wide in disbelief. Mason went still, gripping the edge of the table. Ethan turned away, trying to swallow the fury welling up inside. I looked him straight in the eyes. I didn't dare say anything back then, but I can't keep it inside anymore. Felicia stood up and walked over to the control panel for the outdoor security system. We all gathered to watch the footage. And then, the raw truth played out before us. Sierra, wearing a red dress, walked over from the side table holding a plate of grilled shrimp, and handed it directly to me. The video continued, showing me giving that plate to Jamie, who ate without any suspicion. Minutes later, he started trembling. His face turned pale, and he collapsed. Felicia cried. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "I can't believe this." Mason said nothing, but tears silently streamed down his cheeks. There were no more excuses for Sierra, no more doubts, no more denial. Felicia hugged me. "Thank you for speaking up. She's not the Sierra we used to know anymore." We didn't scream. We didn't break down. There was just a heavy, overwhelming sense of disappointment that filled the room. Mason called the lawyer. Felicia stated clearly, "We'll hand the footage to the police." Jamie was the only one who could file an official complaint. Mason and Ethan would visit him at the hospital after he recovered. As for me, I sat with my hands on my belly, feeling the small life growing inside me. I whispered to myself, "You will grow up in a family that tells the truth and stands for justice." Hello, everyone. I'm finally back to share the next update, even though it's been over a month since the last one. Right now, I'm pregnant, a journey filled with emotions and a fair amount of uncertainty. The biggest news: Sierra was arrested after the police gathered evidence secretly submitted by my in-laws, Felicia and Mason. She completely broke down. During interrogation, Sierra didn't deny anything. She cried right there in the questioning room, A completely different image from the arrogant woman I once knew. Jai, her husband, was stunned into silence when Ethan visited him privately and told him everything. Ethan reassured him that no matter what decision he made, our family would always consider him one of us. He even advised Jay to consider pressing charges, as Sierra's behavior was too cruel to overlook. A few weeks later, after recovering, Jay not only filed charges, but also filed for divorce. Meanwhile, Sierra begged for forgiveness. She kept calling Felicia and Mason, sobbing that she was pregnant and couldn't go to jail in this condition. She pleaded for the sake of their unborn grandchild, begging for mercy. Mason coldly replied, "You must be responsible for yourself. No one can save you forever." Felicia was silent for a long time before saying simply, "As a mother, my heart aches. But as an adult, you must pay the price." The most painful part was what the police uncovered. Sierra had intentionally poisoned my meal at the family dinner, but in the end, it was her own husband, Jie, who ate it. Sierra was charged with endangering life, causing serious injury, and food tampering, charges that cannot be denied. She tried to argue that I was the one who accidentally gave G the wrong plate, and thus I was the one who had poisoned him. Of course, the court rejected such an absurd defense. Sierra was held in custody pending trial, and this time, I believe no one can protect her anymore. As for me and my son, Nate, we're doing okay. Nate doesn't know what happened with his aunt. Ethan and I had a serious discussion and agreed that once our son is old enough, we'll sit him down and explain the truth in a way that helps him understand consequences, responsibility, and forgiveness. I fear that moment, but I know it must come. About this pregnancy, the doctor has me scheduled for bi-weekly ultrasounds. Ethan and I decided to keep the baby's gender a surprise until the birth. After the incident with Sierra, my parents became extremely worried about my mental health. They suggested I start therapy, since even though I seem fine on the outside, my mind remains haunted. I agreed. Since that day, I haven't eaten anything prepared by others. Even at restaurants or small gatherings, I only eat food I've made myself. Part of me just can't trust anyone anymore. Ethan understands. He's always patient, holding my hand whenever I get triggered, gently whispering, "You're safe now, Amira." It may sound simple, but those words heal more than any therapy session. Update 4 will come next. 8 months later, Sierra was convicted and officially began her prison sentence. I never attended any of the hearings. I didn't want to see her again. Occasionally, Felicia would share that during the trial, Sierra admitted she had been jealous of me for years. She said the day Ethan noticed me was the day she started to feel replaced, because Sierra had always dreamed that one of her best friends would marry Ethan. And when I announced my pregnancy at Ethan's birthday party, right when she was planning to announce her own, Sierra completely lost control. She felt her moment had been stolen. In a fit of rage and overwhelmed by pregnancy hormones, she decided to mix poison into my food, just to send me to the hospital for a while. She claimed she never meant to harm me or the baby, but those words held no value anymore. She felt robbed of the moment. In a fit of rage and raging hormones, she decided to mix poison into my food, all with the goal of hospitalizing me for a while. Of course, the judge rejected that defense. Sierra was sentenced to prison and will be out of our lives for a long time. G, Sierra's ex-husband, was finally freed. Their divorce was finalized. Since then, Jamie has stayed in touch with my family. We always invite him to family events, and he never turns us down. When he talks to me, he says I did nothing wrong. Still, I can't stop apologizing for handing him my plate that night. I cried while saying sorry, blaming myself for switching the plates. Jamie just smiled and gently said, "No one could have predicted that, Amira. Stop blaming yourself." He forgave me, and at last, I've started to forgive myself too. Ethan and I welcomed a baby girl a few months ago. We named her Luna because she came to us like moonlight after a long stretch of darkness. Nate loves his little sister. She's only a few months old, but every time Nate kisses her forehead, it fills my heart to the brim. Ethan said, "You brought light back to all of us." I know that although the scars of the past remain, we are now living in a new chapter, a chapter of healing, of family, and of unconditional love. Thank you for listening to my story. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear more real-life stories. Not just shocking ones, but stories full of lessons and hope.